Fresh off the airplane back from London, where he was with Fox Sports as part of the MLB showcase out there in England, coordinating producer Jonathan Kaplan joins me today on the On to Something podcast. I'm Bryan Fenley. You can follow me on Twitter at Bryan Fenley. And here in this conversation, we are going to go outside just chatting about Jonathan's work. Sure, we're going to talk about the intricacies of what he's doing right now and his career, but we are going to get the lay of the land as far as his personal life as well. He's a father of two daughters, teenage daughters. How does he make all of that work? How does he make this life work in a way that he does? We're going to get to all of it in an entertaining and spirited conversation that is coming to you right now. But before we get started, don't forget to subscribe. Here's my chat with Jonathan. We got him on. We landed him. Jonathan Kaplan is with me. He is a coordinating producer at Fox Sports. On the On to Something podcast, I'm Bryan Fenley. Jonathan, John, Kapper, they call you many different things. I appreciate you coming on and joining me as well.
And I've been called a whole lot worse. So pleasure to be here.
What is it about working in the industry where you don't technically work in the industry until somebody has come up with a nickname like Kapper for you, for instance?
It's true. Everybody has a nickname. Some reason, everybody I know seems to have the last name, and you add a dog on there. So to some people, I'm Cap Dog. You just add a dog. If you reach dog status, you really made it. So.
Well, I feel like you have made it. You are making it at Fox, considering all the cool work that you're doing right now. And you strike me, and I feel like, what should I call you for this interview? Should I call you John? Should I call you Jonathan? Should I call you Kapper? What's going to make you first and foremost most comfortable in this conversation?
Well,
because I want you to be comfortable.
Work, we're talking work. Call me Kapper. That's what everybody calls me there.
All right.
My wife doesn't call me that, and neither does my mom. So.
Well, I'm neither one of them. So I'm going to go with Kapper, but you strike me as someone who is very adventurous. Why do I get that impression in getting to know you and learning about you and your story?
Adventurous. I think people who know me would probably not say I'm too adventurous. I'm kind of type A more, which most producers in this industry are. So I'm always thinking of, plan B and plan C and how things can go wrong and what I need to do to make sure I don't get caught with my pants down. So that's kind of what my personality is, more than adventurous.
Let's say when you're at home as the dad role, when are you not type A?
It's probably worse because I don't micromanage my kids. I like them to I have two teenage daughters, which is an interesting period of life. So it's a constant challenge now. It's kind of a tug of war. They want to be independent, and you're trying to make sure they're not doing stupid crap all the time. So you got to give them some rope, and it's really measuring how much you give them. So that's kind of what I deal with at home with my kids. And I am type A. My youngest daughter is the complete opposite, complete free spirit, forgets everything, lives minute to minute, doesn't have a calendar, doesn't have a list, is constantly forgetting her stuff all over town. And that's what I'm dealing with. And I'm trying to convince her that that's not the way to be. And you're not going to be a good professional. And people won't want to hire you if you're like this. So you better change your ways, especially if you're going to go to college.
How well is she receiving this message that you're giving her?
As well as you would expect a 15-year-old to take advice from parents. She doesn't need any advice. She knows everything. So if she watches this, I'm going to get in trouble. But nonetheless, I'm being truthful.
Yeah, and I think honestly, as a father, the most important thing to gain your kids' respect is to be truthful. So she might laugh at you. She's not laughing with you. She's laughing at you. And I look forward to hearing about those conversations.
Yes. I know somewhere deep inside she's listening, and hopefully it resonates a little bit. And probably with a little more maturity, it will someday. But, you pick your battles at this age.
We just had Father's Day. It wasn't too long ago. So what did you do? How did they celebrate you on that day?
My kids, they paid attention to me and they weren't embarrassed to have me in front of their friends. So that was nice. Now we went out for a good Chinese dinner, a nice place here in town, and just hung out together. And they made sure that they weren't on the phone and they weren't over anybody's house or going down to the Third Street Promenade in Santa Monica. They actually spent some time with their dad, and it was just quality time. And wrote some nice notes, to tell me how great I am as a father, and that hopefully that'll lead to more rides and more money for them. Two things they can't do is drive and make money, but they're always asking for both. Just rides and money.
There's always an agenda behind these kind notes. How well, though, as you're reading those notes, are you taking compliments?
From my kids, oh, I know they mean it. I'm a pretty good dad, and it is my main job, and I think we have a good relationship, a great relationship. It's finding that happy median of not always criticizing and letting them know, the things they do well. And I do. They do a lot of things well, and I let them know, and I make sure that I let them know. It's that balance, because I'm always constantly giving them advice. I feel like, a lot of times, maybe too much. I don't live in the moment. I'm more always gearing my advice and things I tell them to what's going to make them better as an adult and be prepared for adulthood and learn lessons. So I think, I try to do a good job of having fun with them and laughing with them, but also constantly making sure that they're doing the right things, and when they're not, letting them know how they can do it better in a constructive way. Having girls for me has been a different challenge, because I didn't grow up with sisters, or and I'm in a male dominated industry the way it is right now, and hopefully getting better. My industry, it is. But nonetheless, it's been a learning process. I had a brother, and I grew up around boys, and it basically, you have to raise them a little different. You have to say things softer, and you have to do it in a way that, they can understand, but don't feel like they're constantly being criticized. So it's been a challenge, but a good one.
That idea of the way in which you taper your approach into talking to your girls and always looking ahead and always sort of planning ahead, making sure they're aware of what's happening in the future and how your mind works that way. How early in your life did you feel like that was your approach in yourself and looking ahead at all times, as if to say maybe you had to grow up a little earlier than you had to?
I don't know. I think it's just your personality. I'm always looking ahead, and sometimes it's not always good. You have to live in the moment. My wife is pretty much the opposite of me. She lives in the moment constantly, and I'm kind of the camp counselor. I organize trips, and I'm the one that's always thinking, financially into the future, and all this constant constant looking ahead. And she's always telling me, just slow down and stop. Just let's enjoy today, which is good advice. And I think that's a good balance that we have in our marriage. They say you usually marry your opposite, and in this case, it's worked out for me pretty well.
What changes within you when you are able to get more into the present? And that, how hard is that for you? But when you do it, what do you realize?
For me, it's usually it depends. When I'm busy at work, which is the fall. For the fall for us is crazy. We have big noon kickoff I work on, along with postseason baseball, and it's 24/7, and for all of us, my whole group. So it's a crazy time of year, and so I really try to stay in the moment during that period, but it's hard. But what I do is I make it up on the back end. As soon as December comes and things slow down a little bit, I make sure that I take extra time and I live in the moment, and I spend it with my family, and we take little day trips here and there where we can. And And I'm cognizant of it all the time because I know it doesn't last. My kids, as I said, are teenagers, so we got a handful of years before they go to college, and so I'm trying to make sure I make the quality time count. So it's finding that balance, which is really important. So it's a constant struggle, especially in the fall. But when it's not in the fall, I make sure I really do make it up to them.
Where do you take them on these day trips?
Well, I mean, we live in Southern California, so you can go anywhere. You can go to the beach. You can go to Palm Springs, Santa Barbara, San Diego. There's so many places up and down the coast you can take the time, and sometimes just staying local, taking them out to a nice restaurant and spending time with them and but there's so many little towns up and down the coast you can go to. That's what makes it good. You don't have to jump in a plane every time you want to travel.
The idea of you being a dad and how that's impacted your outlook on life, I find fascinating because it does find its way into work as far as you being a father and how that changes you in a beneficial way. The idea of being a dad in that it allows you to more so than ever before, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I would think for me, it would be to reinforce what you believe in and to stand up for what you believe in your family. That notion of fighting for what you believe in when it comes to your family, how do you feel like that's reinforced in your work and you standing up for what you believe in, what you think is right in the industry, and how you carry yourself and where you're going and where you want to take the group that you're working with and where they can go?
Um, so the question really is, how do I deal with my kids, or how do I deal with work in that situation?
Yeah, so it would be the idea of when you're a dad, I would think that it allows you to see a new side of yourself in that you stand up for what you believe in. You want what's right for your kids. And that
Right.
idea of putting yourself out there like that and standing up for what they believe in and for what you all believe in, how does that idea of fighting for what's right within the family then take itself into work and how you're a big advocate for your group and you fight for them and you stand up for them and you want what's best for them and how there are some parallels in a way.
Sure, sure. I mean, like I said before, I try to be an example for my kids, um, in every way. And I always feel, obviously we know that's so important, because they look up to you and they follow you and they watch you. And as it pertains to work, it's kind of the same thing. We have a group of about 25 people, great group of hardworking, you know, great women and men, that work very hard and close together. And yeah, I think you're always on the stage with them too, and you want to make sure that they understand what's expected and the example that you set of hard work and values and having their back at all times. And it's kind of the same as I said before. I make sure that I let people know that I work with, when they're doing a good job and when they work on something that's successful and looks nice, whether it's a feature, or an element or a music video or whatever they produced. I make sure they know that they did a good job, because we're constantly nitpicking in our industry. You know, is could you use a dissolve there, or did these bytes work well together, or whatever. So it's finding a balance with them too. And quite honestly, that some of the people that I work with, that we travel together the entire fall and other events during the year as well, I see them more than I see my family. It's true. We're with each other so many hours. So there is a parallel in that respect.
When you say a piece of broadcast work did a good job, what does that look like? What criteria internally, Capper, does that have to have for you to say that?
Well, it depends. We work. I work on pregame shows and postgame shows. Um, and there's a lot of things. There's a lot of elements in production that goes into what we do. And there are a lot of people in my group that work countless hours to make sure the details are taken care of, whether it's on shoots, whether it's in the edit bay. So it's you know when you see something that's done outstanding, you just know that the work that's put into it. I've worked at every level in this industry, um, as most of us have, to get to this point, and you just know, you understand that the process can be hard, and the details are what's important. So when you see a piece that's a little different, or that's shot differently, or the interviews went great, and it's just put together really smart in the edit bay, you recognize it and you make sure that they understand, how good it is. It's important, because like I said, we get to the point in the fall where people are cranking out pieces like every other day, and it's a lot, and sometimes it can get lost in the shuffle, and you want to make sure people understand that it's appreciated. So that's kind of my perspective on, judging. There's a lot that goes into some of these pieces that are cut for our shows and segments.
So many people that you work with, and like you said, you make sure that you let them know how much you appreciate them. As you were making your trek up the ranks, starting at ESPN and obviously working your way into Fox and spending some time at NFL Network and back at Fox National now, who do you, and has to be a countless numbers of people that you appreciate for believing in you, in seeing things in you early in your life, early in your career that maybe you didn't even see in yourself, and now here you are. How do you show your appreciation for those people who took chances on you?
Specifically in my industry, how do I show appreciation? Well, certainly if I ever bump into them or see them, I always make sure to let them know. Um, but there were a lot of people, I started at ESPN. Um, like the first after Sports Center, I think I started working on Sunday Night NFL, and Fred Gaudelli was the producer there. And between him and Tim Corrigan and Tom Archer and some of these guys that have been at ESPN forever, and obviously moved on to other things, those guys taught me the value of work ethic and detail, and just really showed me, how to be a professional in this industry. And that was early on. And I'll bump into Freddie once in a while. I remember when I was at NFL Network, I would see him at the Super Bowl once in a while. Or, he'll be at the Emmys and someone will let me know that, he said hi. So I'll make sure I keep in touch with some of these guys. I caught up with Tim Corrigan a couple of years ago, during the pandemic, when we were all locked down. Somehow I ended up talking to him, and, I let him know how I felt about him, and, you know, a lot of the things I learned along the way, started there. And obviously since then, there's been so many people that have showed me, how to succeed in this industry, and with great passion. So there's a lot of people and I make sure I let them know. I always do.
Fred came on with me here on this conversation platform, and we honestly spent most of the time, Capper, talking about his relationship with his daughter and how much that means to him. So it was really cool to see that side of him. Obviously, you've worked with him, you know him very well, and just to see beyond what he has done in the industry space, just to learn that other side of him was really special.
That's a side that I'll let you know that he never let us see. So he, for Freddie could crack the whip, but in a good way, as long as he knew you were working hard. If you weren't, or if you screwed something up, Freddie would let you know in the way that only Freddie could do.
Well, there
Um,
was that pursuit of excellence, like you said, that he bestowed upon his team, and which you took with you from working with him when you first got in the business and into what you do now. But when you talk about everything that you have learned in the industry, Capper, how much of that, if I'm to make a graph and to say how good of a how good of a listener you are leads to the amount of learning you've done, how much do they correlate for you? Listening, observing, and rate of growth of learning in the industry and how that applies to you?
That's everything for me. I mean, listening and paying attention, sometimes making mistakes and learning from them. Um, there's people I work with right now, that just do an unbelievable job, especially on my team that we work with for Big Noon Kickoff and postseason baseball. And when we're out on the road, just watching them work, my director and, you know, another CP that I work with, Bardia, and David Fowler is my director, and just, and there's so many people that in our group that we work with that are just so talented. And I learn from these guys all the time. I still do, just watching the way they approach and everything about what they do in our industry has taught me a lot. So I still learn. I've been doing this forever, but I'm still learning, and it's always a challenge. There's always a better way you can go about, doing something, whether it's from a creative standpoint or a technical standpoint, or just organizational. So I never stop learning from the guys I work with now, and even people in our group that I'm not always traveling with. I didn't do features for a long time, but we have some incredibly talented feature producers and APs, that just crank out some amazing work. And sometimes I'll just ask them, how did you think of that, or what was your approach to that? Because I learn from them as well. So I'm constantly learning, and it's exciting because it just means that you never get bored, and there's always another challenge, and we always have new talent. Like, Derek Jeter just joined us. I was just in London, and it was great for us to just try to figure out the best way for him to succeed. And he feels like a natural already. He was very comfortable, but just putting talent and analysts in the best position to succeed and listening to them and understanding what they need to be successful and what we can do better. I mean, and everybody's an individual, so everybody needs something different. So that's always a fun challenge.
You got back from traveling. What is traveling like with you?
Um, Traveling can wear you down. It grinds you down, the airports and everything else. But covering these events is fantastic. I mean, that's why we do this. It's it's better than sitting in a studio every single week. It's what makes it exciting when you go on these events, and different ways to cover them, and how can we be different, and what can we do creatively this week. So yeah, the travel sucks. We all hate traveling, every single week, being in airports and the delays and all that crap, but and the sleep deprivation. But it's all worth it, for what we do, because we enjoy it and we love it. And it's always fun to see what we can do different at different events. So I'll never complain overall about traveling, but it's a pain in the ass.
It's no question about it. The place and where you are in your career, going back to when you first started in this industry and where you thought you would be, what's the same, what's similar, what's different about where you thought you would be when you first got in the industry and where you are now when you look at the timeline of your career?
I had no idea when I first started. I guess getting out of college, all anybody ever wants to do is be in front of the camera. I guess I'm going to have to go to Tuskegee or Topeka and figure it out. And when I went to ESPN, it was like this whole world opened up where, wow, there's all these people in production behind the camera that do all this amazing stuff. This is great. Somehow, some way, I got to figure out how to stay in the sports industry, because I know this is what I want to do. I was always a sports fanatic my whole life. I just early on, I kind of came of age with sports when cable TV really came into light, like in the early 80s. When you're watching the Superstation and the Braves and the Hawks and WWOR in New York and the Nets. And, so I kind of came of age then, and I knew that somehow, some way, I had to get in this industry. I didn't quite know what was in this industry except on the camera. So, like I said, when I got to ESPN, that's when I really realized that there's this whole world you can pursue in so many avenues. Um, so, what did I envision I would be? I didn't. I kind of rode the wave for a while. I wanted just to see what would float my boat. I started out on the game side, doing remotes in graphics and traveling, doing graphics on the road for college basketball and baseball and NFL draft and things like that. And then finally, I decided when I was at Fox the first time in the late '90s, early 2000s, that I wanted to pursue being a producer on the studio side, a little less travel, and it seemed like a pretty cool opportunity. Um, so I kind of got off the road from that perspective. Never thought I'd be back on the road like this, but this is good. And yeah, I mean, from where I started to where I am now, I never thought I'd be doing this. But this is exactly where I want to be. I love what I do. Working on big events on the studio side has been fantastic, and the coordination that that we have to do with so many entities, like working with the game crew and working with talent and working with a whole team of production. It's fantastic, and you have to be organized and you have to be passionate. Um, you have to get along with people, obviously, and all of that has been fantastic. So yeah, I never thought I would take this route, but it's kind of the wave that I've kind of been on, and I'm really happy where I am now, and I would like to stay on this for hopefully for a long time.
As you will. And as we wrap up this conversation, you talked about all of the key principles of who you are, your passion, and you said early on that you're not sure how adventurous you are. As I'm learning more about your story, Capper, you're more adventurous than you think you are. So I wanted to make sure I got that across before we conclude this conversation.
So let me answer you there. So I can be very adventurous, but I need to be pushed. Once okay, so I have to do something or I have to go somewhere, I'll be adventurous. But you have to push me to that point, you know. Otherwise, I'll just flip the game on, and I'm happy to work out today and watch the game and hang out with my family. But, you know, my job by description is adventurous anyway. As what we do is sometimes can be very energizing and crazy at the same time. It's like it's at times it's like juggling chainsaws, but in a fun way because it's the challenge of, okay, if it doesn't work, it's fine. We know where to go and we know what to do, but at least we tried. So yeah, we adventurous from a standpoint of what we do at work, but you're not going to see me like climbing the Himalayas anytime soon.
And if you do, we'll do a second round of a conversation on that. I'm
Yeah,
sure
we can do it from there.
we could fill an hour or longer talking about how you made it to the top. And you have, though, in your own way in this industry, made it to the top. And it's been an honor to humbly have you on this conversation, not to just learn about your career journey, but to learn about all the intricacies of you being a dad. So, Capper, I really appreciate you doing this with me. Thanks so much.
Thanks for having me, Bryan, and wish me good luck with the teenage girls. I'm going to need it.